We are live. We're going to call this episode 74. Yes, of the Athletic Philosopher podcast. Once again, I am coming to you in podcast form, but also live on Substack. So we got a few people filtering on uh, into the live stream here. So I want to just thank everybody for posting up live and hanging out for this conversation and seeing how the sausage get made when it comes to ideas. I am your humble host for this experience, whether live or recorded. My name is Jordan Goldstein. I am a former university professor in sport history, sport philosophy, sociology, and psychology. Me and the university, we didn't get along in a lot of ways. Um, Mostly in the pursuit of truth and knowledge thing. They weren't interested in that. I was. So now I am outside of the academy. I'm applying my wisdom and knowledge in the form of coaching. I got one on one homies that I help in fitness and life, where we use the fitness kind of as a spiritual self-knowing tool, so that we can find consistency. We can use fitness as a form of personal expression and artistic creation so that we can break free of limitations that are holding us back in all of the other areas of our lives. And so basically we go for the full potential, body, mind, and spirit, which is fitness, to get there. I also run a group coaching community, Bleh, which is based on the same principles. And I call that the temple. And we are a very active community of individuals who are all using fitness as this spiritual self knowing tool. I am also the tribal professor, assistant coach on tribal training, which is the excellent online endurance training team run by Ryan Dreher, which again, I'm bringing the same kind of let's extract the deep meaning and the value of why we want to live an athletic life, why we want to set athletic goals, why we want to dream and achieve and aspire to physical achievements as a way to unleash that greater potential in our lives that may be blocked or limited by my mindset, by my perspective, by my heart stance, by all of these different things. So in if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I really like what this guy is saying, I really like this philosophy, I really like how he's trying to live and apply the wisdom to not only his own life, but to help other people in holistic health, body, mind, and spirit, you can get in contact with me. I'm going to put all my information down in the notes of the podcast where you can get in contact with me for either one-on-one coaching or my temple group. If you're interested in like joining the team, tribal training, which is much more of a, we'll call it a formalized team structure and a little bit more geared towards the training element and in particular endurance training towards ultra marathons and Ironman triathlons. I'll also drop a link so you can apply to join our team. But it's basically a very similar thing across all these different coaching platforms that I offer. If you are listening to the podcast, I'll also drop my links to social, to my X profile, and to Substack. If you're listening and watching right now on Substack, you can just send me a message about any of these things. All right. Cool. Good. Thank you. And for those of you who are joining on the live stream, feel free to drop questions. Feel free to make this live and interactive if you so choose. I appreciate everybody tuning in. And we are going to get going, rolling with our discussion today, which is an addendum on another addendum, which last episode I broke down what I believe are the two basic building blocks of reality as I experience them that I can know deeply with the right intention through sport and physical activity. And this was actually an addendum to episode 72, which was my description of two different kinds of endurance athletes. And this is sort of based on my own experience as an endurance athlete, but someone now who coaches multiple people across finish lines, both in triathlon and in ultra running. And we'll just go to 72, 73, and then we'll preview what I might be talking about today in 74. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So 72 was the difference between the athletes who go for the chase and the athletes who go for the space, right? There's something about certain athletes, when I'm talking about adult athletes in the endurance space in particular, but I do think you can probably break this down into more of a general understanding of the two characteristics, um, to sort of maybe define why people will come into sport for the right reasons as adults. Um, and now that I'm thinking philosophically, that reminds me of just sort of this natural proclivity amongst philosophers to break things down into dualities, to break things into dichotomies. I'm just thinking about Thomas Jefferson. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a wild one. I'm thinking about Thomas Jefferson and his two natural dispositions. When talking about political philosophy, for example, right, the people who maybe drive more toward a collectivist understanding of society, and those much more of an individualist bent. And he talks about sort of like the two natural factions, right? Thomas Jefferson does. So it's interesting to note how we always like to try to break things down into disparate parts. Historians, we don't like twos, we like threes. Historians have to break everything down into threes. So everything is like a three-legged stool in history. Philosophy, it's a little bit more dualistic, although it's not exclusively dualistic. So it's just a little wrinkle there. Um, but but I was talking about the chase and I was talking about the space, and it ended up being kind of a self-coaching episode, 72, where I was talking about my own transition into having to train like an athlete who chases as opposed to just being the athlete who wants to go for the space. And that led into 73, which is a very experimental, conceptual style of episode where I was expanding this idea of the two kinds of athletes to the two building blocks, fundamental building blocks of reality as I experience reality. So it gave me a chance in 73 to talk about phenomenology, this philosophy of experience, and how playing sport brings me into the two fundamental building blocks of reality and consciousness by playing sports, which I identified as rhythm and breath, which I identified as rhythm and breath, right? Breath being the thing that makes me alive, rhythm is the thing that moves life. Rhythm is the thing that moves life. And then I went all into some interesting evolutionary anthropology. We got into a little bit of polyrhythm music theory. Um, and it was a very interesting way for me to bring you inside of my conception of the depth of understanding that sports can really give us about not only ourselves, but like our consciousness and our place in the world. And that then is leading into this discussion, episode 74, which is all about morality, which is all about the normative philosophy of enacting good or bad in the world through myself and how I can know which actions to take that may correct me to good or move me to bad by moving my body physically and intentionally. So this is the morality episode. This is the extension on 72 and 73, which is now going to talk about how sport is this battleground where I can understand the forces of good and evil and how I can play them out, and how a proper resonance and consonance with breath, with rhythm, and an understanding of, say, like chase and space, how we can tie this all together. And this is going to be full circle, maybe in a couple of different circles. So we're going to be looping around different loops, which is going to be fun. And I make no promises about conclusions. I make no promises about synthesis. This is simply just an experiment in thinking. Like, this is stream of consciousness off the dome, piecing things together with my experience, kind of philosophizing. Like, is there evidence? Sure. Are there sources? Absolutely. Are there philosophers that I can ground all this in? Yeah, 100%. But I didn't do that because I live a busy life and it's a day of coaching and it's a day of laundry and it's a day of dinner and it's a day of picking up the kids, right? And it's a day of biz building. It's a day of all these things. So if you're here for sources, sorry, But through discussion, we're going to unearth the truth either way. Conversation is kind of magic. This is a conversation with myself. It's also a conversation with you. So thanks for coming on. Okay, back up. When we are talking philosophy, we are talking philosophy of experience. So again, I am not making any pronouncements on the absolute state of good and evil. I am talking about how my experiences in physical activity alert me to the nature of good and evil within me and allow me to choose good more often than I can choose bad, right? And this was how I used to frame my history and philosophy of physical activity course, which was what we called the womb to the tomb course when I used to teach in university. This was the first year course. This was getting it all at once. And rather than thinking about how sport teaches me about the nature of the world ontologically, it's how does sport teach me about the nature of my experience? Like, how does it allow me to know the truth of what I am experiencing day to day in my life? We're here, we're instantiated in these bodies. How do I make sense of it? And then once I'm able to make a little bit of sense of it, how am I able to tilt it normatively? Right. So normative analysis. And the normative analysis in philosophy is a moral analysis. It's to know which is the good choice and which is the bad choice. And this can then be decided, religiously, theologically, socially, culturally. We might even think about ethics, this objective good and bad, this objective set of actions in the world that I can take that'll tilt me to good, or that can tilt me to bad. And let me just start by talking about rhythm and breath in a musical sense of how I know that this collection of things is good. All right. So we're going to kind of return to the music here. And we're gonna hope that this is gonna provide the rhythm for this episode to have some coherence here. This one might be totally off the rails, but they can't all be gold. They can't all be gold. So I ended off last episode 73 talking about the polyrhythms of a band like Meshuggah and how the polyrhythms of that art form can alert me and educate me on the polyrhythms that are at play in my life and that how I can bring them together through like a coherence of breath. Okay. So breath and rhythm can help me understand goodness and badness when it comes to producing beauty in music, right? Like if I'm playing off key, if I'm playing off tune, if I'm playing off rhythm, the music that I make is going to be bad. It's not going to be good. And that's not the same as purposefully playing around with the parameters of rhythm. So if we have like an experimental jazz artist, for example, if we have experimental musicians in, say, the metal sphere, these are just two that I know, where you've got experimental jazz and we'll say we got experimental metal. And a good example of this would be something like math metal, right? Math metal is this very intriguing genre of metal where the particular motivation of the artist is to play in the strangest time signatures possible and to explore changing the changes in the different time signatures. So a good example of this is a band like the Dillinger Escape Project. Okay. The Dillinger Escape Project, when they were trying to write a new song, what they would do is they'd take two die, right? Like dice from a game, and they'd throw it, and then whatever the numbers were, that's going to be their time signature. So it's like they had a blue dice and a red dice, and the blue is going to be the top measure, and the red is going to be the bottom measure. So it's like you throw it, and it's like you got 5-2. Okay, what the heck? Number one, what is 5-2? How do we write a song in 5-2? And then they might think, but we want to transition, maybe the verse is in 5-2, but what's the chorus going to be? And they roll the dice again. And it's like, oh, well, the chorus is going to be in 2-5. Okay, so we got the verse in 5-2, we got the chorus in 2-5. How are we going to do this? Okay. And then what ends up happening sometimes with these experimental bands is then they actually start, well, okay, well, 5-2 is going to be in this scale, 2-5 is going to be in that scale. We're going to play them over top of each other, right? And one of my favorite bands in this like chaotic jumble, and this is just reminding me of my old composing days, is a band called Battles. And Battles is like this outgrowth of a bunch of other bands. It's kind of like this weird experimental supergroup. Um, Half the band in Battles comes from another band called Don Caballero. Don Caballero is this very intriguing experimental jazz rock band where they're playing with dissonant scales and off time signatures. So everything is kind of off rhythm and everything is kind of off key, but it's so intentional what they're doing that it's not just random noise. So it's not just bad, right? It may not, upon the first listen, be like the most aesthetically pleasing thing you've ever heard, but you have to recognize like the brilliance of the musicians in pushing the boundaries. So it may sound bad, but it's not bad, if that makes sense. Like it might sound as if it's off, but it's supposed to sound off because it's really testing the limits of what we know about music theory. It's like the quantum physicists, it's the edge of experimental physics, right? They're out there. It may not make immediate sense, but they're scaffolded on things that all make sense. So therefore, they're allowed to be exploratory. So when we're talking about goodness and badness in terms of music, it's not always like that good music is just the easiest, most accessible thing. Like sometimes the pop music is the worst music. Why? Because it's derivative, because it's formulaic, because it's predictive patterned, right? So it may sound good, but it might actually be bad music, right? So goodness and badness is not just like the aesthetic quality. It's a little bit deeper than that when we're talking about music. And then it comes to preference and taste, and there's the subjective element to it, and what is good and what is bad, which helps us understand this moral plane of good and bad. Like, what is good and what is bad? Is it the same for everybody? Is it different? Like, morals and ethics, they're not the same. Ethics are supposed to be the universal, morals are supposed to be the particular. So if I'm trying to figure out now, like the good and the bad that can flow or can be understood from my movement, is it this objective thing that I can know and can determine and can be certain for each and every individual? I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think like physical activity as a moral arena is not for everybody at all times. It's for particular people at particular times with particular contexts and particular circumstances. This is for like let's get it let's not twist it up. This is for the privileged. This is for the people who can spend time thinking about self-actualization, who can spend time trying to get to the top of the pyramid in their psychological and their spiritual development. If you got to figure out where the next meal is coming from or how to get a roof over your head, this is not for you. This is not for you. Like philosophy is not for you. You got to figure out how to survive first. Once survival is met, then we can start moving up in terms of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and everything. All right. So this is not some ethical thing. This is not something that is open to everybody at all times. This is a unique personalized understanding of the subjective values of my own life, right? So, number one, when I'm talking about goodness and badness as it flows from physical activity, this is a unique and particular and personal experience. It's a personal experience. It is not something that is universalized. So I start to get this intimation then that goodness and badness as concepts, they're going to flow to me through my own particular experience. So that's number one. These are particular to the individual. But how am I going to know? How am I going to know as it flows to me? Well, I'm going to be able to see positive feedback, number one. So the goodness is going to be flowed back into me. And there's a bunch of different ways. This is where that embodied conception starts to really take hold, where I can understand myself as body, mind, and spirit combined, yet all separate. So the goodness of my actions form when I'm able to recognize character growth, when I'm able to recognize a gap that is being filled in the body, in the mind, or in the spirit. In the body, that comes through improved. So I know my training is doing good when I have positive feedback in terms of, I'm just going to talk about running, faster times, lower heart rates, improved VO2 max, like improved efficiency in running form. I can go faster, I can go longer, and it's easier. So I get good feedback, like that the training, like if I was training in a bad way, what would happen? I'd have injuries. I would be out there less time. I would not be able to improve my performance. So we do have some objective measure in the body, but it's not as black and white as just the numbers, as just the numbers. Like it can feel easier. I can feel faster. I can feel more complete. Okay. Number one. But I also have mental wins. I also have spiritual wins. I can see myself negotiating with myself where I used to drag and procrastinate and give into excuses about starting. Now I just go. Okay. Now I just go. Now I'm enjoying the adversity. Now I'm enjoying the challenge. Like maybe I was somebody that used to just run on the treadmill inside, and now I'm finding joy in going outside in inclement weather. Not because it's good for my times, but because I am training myself to overcome adversity and to overcome excuses and to embrace challenge as a crucible of growth. So I'm getting a spiritual and a mental win every time I go out into the inclement weather. So I'm broadening my horizons of what goodness is when it comes to physical activity, physical motion. And this all has to be like syncopated to the right rhythm, to the right aim, right? Because if I'm not aimed in the right place with my training, all the good things that flow to me are going to end up being hollow. They're going to be meaningless. They're going to be illusory because I was in service of the wrong thing. The thing that I was doing in totality was not good. So ultimately, the aim has to be appropriate. Ultimately, the aim has to be appropriate, which is again why rhythm and breath becomes so important in understanding this. How do I aim my fitness towards the goodness? How do I aim fitness towards the goodness, the most goodness that my life can bring, both to myself, but ultimately to other people around me, to the community that I can serve, to the people that I can help? How do I know? Think about the ease of which you look upon the difficulty. Think upon that deep breath that you have to take in order to get it going. When I'm running, and I'm running the right pace at the right time, even if it's really hard or if it's really slow, the breath is effortless. The breath is effortless because I'm matched up to the right challenge at the right moment. I'm in sync. I'm syncopated. So the ease of which that I even can set a goal and know that that's the right goal, that to me is a clear sign that I'm aiming towards the goodness. Here's a good example from one of the guys that I coach, and this is from our call earlier today. This guy is an absolute hero. This is a guy who has done charity rides on a bike across Canada to raise money for childhood cancer. And we're reorienting that familiar context into a brand new challenge for him. But we can look at kind of this like relationship between breath and rhythm and notice that when he was doing it on the bike, there was a heaviness to the breath because he was always pushing through. It was always this more pain. It was always more punishment. It was always, if you're not hurting, then it's not good. If you're not hurting, then it's not good. And this was all kind of in the service of a greater good, but it wasn't good for him. The hard breathing, the grinding your teeth just to power through the next. piece of physical adversity, right? That's not good. That's not good. If that's all your experience, which was mostly his experience, was just grit the teeth, grind through the pain, and breathe through it. So there was no ease to the breath. There was no rhythm to the breath other than forced punishment, forced pain. So, okay, I'm able to complete it. I'm able to make my achievement. I'm able to do the ride, but what did it leave in its wake? It left guilt and shame and remorse and a broken down body, which was not functional. And that led to a depreciated self image and a depressed version of himself. And just the negative cascades go on and on and on and on. So in training, if I'm gritting my teeth and I'm struggling to find the ease of my breath in starting and in the doing, in the finishing, in the reflecting, in the planning to go again, it all of that is this forced and I'm jamming it. There's no rhythm, there's no flow, there's no harmony. It's not the right aim for me. Sure, there are moments in the effort, if we're talking physical effort, that I'm gonna have to bear down and I'm gonna have to force the breath and it's gonna have to get uncomfortable, but that should come in syncopation with the larger rhythm of the aim that I have. That there are moments for me to go hard. There are moments for me to force the breath. There are moments for me to push the envelope, but it's not the entire thing. The entire thing has to be like this effortless cadence. It has to be this automatic. It has to be this automatic pull towards harmony. So if that kind of an effort was bad for my guy, what's the good effort? What does the good effort look like? It looks like not pushing yourself to pain every single time you train. It looks like not attaching a broken down body and spirit to the good objective of finishing the effort. It's to train in a way to show up better the next day. It's to train in a way to reverberate the adversity that I'm overcoming in the physical into ways I can overcome adversity in the spiritual and in the mental. So in the case of this guy, it's replacing the grind through no matter what rhythm, which is strained breath and forced rhythm, when you think about it, into a more flowing, natural, automatic style of training, which does not grind, which does not force the issue, but which rather prepares the spirit and the mind to overcome whatever unforeseen adversity is going to affect the body on competition day, on the day where it matters the most. And this pattern has now been replicated big time in this guy's life where he is finding space for others. He is healing the vision that he had of himself as this only going to break yourself kind of a guy in order to go after the big things in life. So he's getting a new lease on life. He's seeing more freedom. He's seeing big time achievements, big time goals, big time progress in his future where he used to just see the past. And the past was this break myself off type of past. So with good aim comes good action, comes good direction, comes goodness that flows through myself versus the other side, badness. So this is how physical activity can start to alert me towards the goodness that's within me, the badness that's within me, and then will allow me to start embodying the goodness, not just in the effort, not just in the training and the competing, but outside of the lines, outside of the training, inside of my life. Here's another way in which this can work. I'll use myself as the example. I'll use myself as the example here. I was biking. Oh my gosh, this is so good. I was biking on Friday, right? Because I'm moving from space athlete to chase athlete, right? I'm moving into the world of Ironman triathlon, and I've only really been in the world of ultra running. So I'm trying to figure out like what are the skills that I can bring. I have a goodness of my process that's been like resonant and reverberating in my life from running. I don't want to just replace this with a different style of training because I'm not so sure that the goodness is going to flow through. Yes, it may prepare me adequately to be a better cyclist, to be a better swimmer, to be a better triathlete, to transition into running from biking and from biking into swimming and how to fuel and how to have the mindset and how to have the technical expertise in all of these different disciplines. Like for sure, that could totally help make it easy. That could totally make it easier. That could make my times faster. That could do all of these things. But that's not why I do the training. I don't do the training just to see it reflected in the body. I'm not after bodily goods only. I'm after mental and spiritual goods. Actually, I'm after the good of the spirit. That's the real reason. The real reason I do is to do training is for the self knowing, is for the self discovery, it's for the self exposition to myself so that I can see where goodness flows, where I can see where gaps emerge, and where I can fill that with my righteous effort to allow more goodness to flow there. So I have this process of training, which I believe unlocks the goodness of my life. And how do I know that? Because the more I throw myself into this training, the better my life gets. And not in terms of like, oh, I don't know. How do people define like the goodness of their lives? Like what are the metrics? What are the metrics that people use to define like the quality of their life? It's not for me, it's not like the money that I make or the house that I have. Although these are important elements to this because if there was no money and we were living in poverty, like I don't think it would be a good thing. I don't think it would be a good thing. So the goodness in my life reflected through the training, it's like patience, openness, authenticity. Patience, openness, authenticity. Patience, I get because if you're going to go and run for 90 minutes, like no matter how fast or hard you go, the 90 minutes ain't going to go any faster. Have to be out there. You get the openness. Like when you're out trail running, you stop worrying about the things that are out of your control. Like I run when it's snowing. I run when it's sleeting. I run when it's a blizzard. I'll run when it's raining. I'll run if there's a thunderstorm. I'll run if it's 100 degrees and 99% humidity. I'll run if it's negative 30 degrees with a negative, with an extra negative 10 degrees on wind chill. I'll run in the most pristine, beautiful sunrise, like the best weather. I'll run through the bugs. I'll run anywhere, right? Because each of those challenges presents its own opportunity for me to rise above. So that's what I'm after. That's the goodness that I'm after. I'm after my ability to overcome my own limits, whether that be excuses that are put onto me from the external world or excuses that bubble up internally, like me wanting to quit or me not wanting to start. So with that aim in mind, right? When I go and I start exercising and these are the things that I'm paying attention to and these are the things that I notice, it becomes very easy for me to see this goodness and then to say, "Oh, that's how I can extend that into another area of my life." So patience, for example, patience with my kids, right? So if I have to be out there in a snowstorm and it's the long run of the weekend and I got to go a minimum of 90 minutes, otherwise it's not long enough. Well, I can't make the wind go away. I can't make the snow go away. I can't make the cold go away. All I can do is like get through it. And I have like just adapted that to patience with my kids where they are exhibiting the raw emotion of being 2 or being 5 or being 7 where their brains are not quite capable yet of what I might consider to be the appropriate adult reaction to the emotions. So rather than me coming in and closing it up with my anger or my frustration or my authority, or maybe it's even like my compassion or my understand, like whatever it is, I'm coming in to fill it up, and that is the wrong thing. that creates dependency from my kid upon an external check on their emotion. They don't get to figure out, A, what is this emotion? B, how do I understand it for myself? And C, how do I start to regulate it? How do I regulate it myself? So with patience, that might look like letting the kid cry for a lot longer than I want to because it's not comfortable for me. But just because I'm uncomfortable doesn't mean it's bad. It actually might be good. Ah, okay. So there's a direct parallel to the training. There's a direct parallel to this training, right? Just as one thing. So to go back to this bike ride, which I alluded to, but totally tangented off of, right? On Friday, I'm in like I'm getting into the third hour of biking for that week, which for me, that's the most I've ever biked in a week, like outside cycling in terms of training. So I'm already in like the PR distance for both distance and for time for the week. And I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling real good. Like I'm starting to get a little confidence. I'm starting to maybe even get a little arrogance in terms of like my capability on the bike. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm going much faster than I went on Monday. And like I feel great. And I feel like I've just gotten started and I'm training in my own way, which is like worked for me in running, which is I train fasted and I don't hydrate and I don't fuel on the effort, no matter how long it is or when I start or whatever. This is just how I do it because I'm interested in different kinds of mental, physical, and spiritual challenges in the effort. So I was just explaining this in the coaching call. It's like, why do you go for a 90-minute bike ride and you do it fasted and you don't take fuel and you don't take water? I want to train my body to figure out what to do when it doesn't think it should have energy. I want it to know, hey, here's where you get energy. Here's how you motivate yourself. Like, here's how you grit. Here's how you grind. Here's how you get through. But that wasn't necessarily a good thing for me to be doing on the bike that day. And how do I know that this was good or bad? Well, I popped out a muscle in my lower back. And this is a muscle that I popped out probably 5 weeks earlier doing some RDLs, probably a bit too soon after I had finished running a 50-mile trail race where I was dog sick. So the motion was bad. The numbers were good. The feel was good, but ultimately the motion was bad and it was tilting me towards badness because it was giving me hubris. It was feeding the ego. It was the wrong aim. It wasn't the restrained measured approach that I had started the week biking and even that I'd started 2 weeks ago, right? Because I'm on tribal. We got 20 plus people that are doing the 70.3 that I'm doing. So I'm seeing what other people are doing for their training. I'm seeing their people are doing 3 hour rides into like 30-minute runs and they're going way faster than me on the bike. So I start to like the comparison game starts to creep into the mind, starts to creep into the mind. And now I'm thinking, I need positive numbers. I need better numbers. And when I started, I was like, I just need 2.5 hours on the bike every week for the next 4 weeks. That was all I was thinking about. I was like, and I don't need to compare. But look what happened. I got out of my own seat. I got out of my own aim. I got off of the good track. That has been the hallmark of my running. In that moment in cycling, I'm going up this hill, and the better part of me would have been restrained and thinking, just why do you got to push right now? You don't need to push. You're already ahead. Just bank what you have. But no, the ego got in the way. Boom, tried to push too hard up a hill. Boom, lower back, seize, contract. Bad, 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 bad. So the bad physical alerts me to the bad mental, which alerts me to the bad spirit, which is you're letting the ego take over and you're letting some arrogant conception of your physical prowess think that you're superior to other people, that you don't need to train like them and you're going to beat them. And then it's like, oh, shoot, that's bad. That's bad. That physical signal was bad training, was bad preparation, It was ego, it was bad execution, it was bad performance. And so that led to the bad reflection of my character, which I was making the wrong choices. That was bad. Now, overall, it's good because my process is one of looking at that, examining my own behavior, and recognizing I'm the only one to blame. I had people in my temple coaching group suggesting, "Oh, you should go get a bike fit. Maybe it's just the components on your bike." Like, and there are elements of this, true, but like if this was just solely on me. No, I made a whole series of bad decisions that cascaded on myself, and that resulted in the bad outcome. And if I don't learn that lesson, that's even worse because now that's a bad reflection on me not examining myself. And if I'm a coach who's telling people, hey, use the physical to examine yourself, and I'm lying to myself through the physical, well, that's even worse. And that's going to lead to me being a fraud. It's going to lead to me being a phony. It's going to lead to none of my clients believing in me anymore. Then I don't have a coaching business. Then I got a negative. Like, do you see how this stuff can actually compound on itself? So just because it's like one little minor tweak in like your glute, you might think, oh, well, that's an isolated thing, but it won't be an isolated thing if I don't learn. If I don't learn from it, it's just going to tilt me towards more bad. And then it's going to tilt me towards even more bad. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to start raging against the world. I'm going to start, why isn't anybody like coming onto my page? Why aren't people signing up anymore? Why are the people who I already coached leaving me? Why can't I make the life that I wanted to make? Do I have to go back to getting like, do I have to go get a job that I'm going to be resentful, that I'm going to start like not enjoying time at home with my family because I'm not getting it in the way that I demand? Like, all of this stuff has the ability to send me right on down into hell if I so demand it and desire and want to go there. And I want to go there if I refuse to look at myself, if I refuse to take responsibility, if I refuse to let the good shine through. And the good is always my willingness to look at the truth. That is how physical activity can tilt us towards moral action by forcing us to look at the truth and having to accept the truth for what it is. That's how we start to live this moral existence through the training, how we can allow it to tilt us towards one or the other. And it's always there for me. It's always there for me. This plays off of, okay, now we can get a little bit of philosophy. This plays off the Solzhenitsyn idea, right? Solzhenitsyn, the guy who wrote the Gulag Archipelago, he says that the line between good and evil goes down the center of every individual person. And it's the choices I make. And Solzhenitsyn is this guy who finds himself in the Gulag in the Soviet Union, and ultimately blames himself. He's like, shoot, I put myself here. I put myself in the gulag. And you might think, no, 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 the Soviets did. Like, the Soviets put you in the gulag. They're the ones that sent you to Siberia. You didn't get on the train and imprison yourself. But he's like, no, I did it. All the times where I could have stood up, all the times where I could have said what I believed, all the times like that I hid and was a coward, that brought me here. That brought me directly to the gulag. I'm responsible. And the physical gives me this really great place to always be responsible. I'm always responsible. Sure, if I want to go out and set a PR and it just so happens it's a super windy day, like, okay, like the wind. All right, but you chose the day, bro. You chose it. There's always your choice. You're always responsible. And the physical teaches you to accept this responsibility, good outcome or bad outcome, and how to filter that into a process of goodness, into a process of goodness. What does a process of goodness look like? Well, it's one that should tilt me towards the better part of my nature. Number one. How do I do that? Well, I need a process of continual overcoming. I need a process of continual overcoming. So, a process that allows me to see adversity and overcome it, achieve, and then go right back down to the bottom and do it all over again. This is kind of like the Sisyphus parable, right? And hey, some more philosophy. Albert Camus. right, who writes about Sisyphus in a modern sense, he says, we should imagine Sisyphus happy. Now, who is Sisyphus? In Greek mythology, I forget the exact origin of the story. I'm so sorry. I should do better. But ends up with this divine punishment, with this eternal punishment where he has to push this large rock up a hill only for it to fall back down to the bottom, and he's got to do it again every single day. So push the same boulder up the same hill every day and have it mean nothing. But if we imagine Sisyphus happy, like Camus says, well, then it doesn't matter that the ball rolls down because the joy comes in the pushing of the ball up. So it's this process of continual overcoming that can teach me about goodness. And ultimately, that's related to my freedom. And it's probably a discussion for a different day. But this process of continual overcoming, yeah, that's going to relate to me goodness. Why? Because I have a chance to observe myself either succumbing to the negative pressure or overcoming it. And every time I can see myself overcoming the negative pressure, well, then I can become a believer in the goodness of myself. I can become a believer in the goodness of myself. And that means I can stretch the goodness beyond the arena because what allowed me to overcome when it came to that workout, people often thinks it's like the hacks with the strategies, right? It's the, oh, I put my running shoes at the front door so that I wouldn't have resistance in getting out the door tomorrow morning. That's true, but how many times did you hit snooze on your alarm? How many times did you scroll on your phone even after you had your running shoes on, right? It's never the hack, it's never the trick, right? It's never the habit. It's you. It's the person. It's who you are. So anytime I can observe who I am doing the good thing in the situation, then I become a believer in my own goodness. So physical activity, like it just gives me this overall sense of goodness. So let's go back to that biking example where I also brought out the bad. Okay, the bad was the push up the hill and then the muscle twinge. What's the good? The good is recognizing this as an entire episode of self exploration. So it's like, oh, shoot. In the moment, it's like, oh, I pushed too hard. I recognized it. Oh, and now I'm in a bad spot because I'm on this downhill. I'm probably still 7 miles away from ending this ride, but I feel like my back seized up. It's like, like, ah, and you can't move. And I felt this on the bike. So what's the goodness? Where does the goodness come? Okay, so here's the adversity. What do I do when the adversity hits? Do I start like blaming other people? Do I blame external circumstances? Am I looking for the easy way out, which at that point might be getting off the bike and calling an Uber so I don't got to pedal my way home? But I ultimately recognize in the moment like that's not it. If I get off the bike, all my muscles are going to seize, then I won't be able to move, and then I'm in real trouble. So it was don't get off the bike and get into a position that's more comfortable than the one you're in. So I'm in a hunched over position. So I get up into an upright posture and I take all the pressure off my legs where it's like I was going hard. All right, now I'm not going anywhere. I'm literally just going to pedal and see what the signal is. Is the pain getting worse? Is the pain getting better? What's happening? Let me interrogate this moment. Let me interrogate this moment. So immediately when adversity comes, I'm not reacting and automatically determining what has to happen. I'm open to exploring the adversity. I'm open to exploring the adversity and my responsibility in bringing it upon myself, but also in how I'm going to get myself out of this. Right. So I start slowly pedaling in this more upright position, and man, I'm in pain, but here we are back to breath and rhythm. I start deep breathing down into the diaphragm, down into that back area where I'm now starting to bring blood flow to the muscle and starting to stimulate it with a positive rhythm of breath and motion. Okay, so I'm kicking back into the right elements of breath and motion to understand where I'm at in this moment. and the entire episode is an episode of goodness because I'm utilizing the training for the exact reason why I told you I wanted to utilize the training, which was self-exploration and self-knowledge and self-knowing, and to overcome adversity so that I can gain spiritual and mental willpower. So now I'm actually doing that in the moment. Okay, so the bad moment is now turned into a good episode by the intention of my heart and my mind, and by properly syncopating and modulating the rhythm and the breath of my effort to where it must be. Like I got the bad moment because the breath and the motion, right? The breath, the breath and the rhythm, they were not aligned to where I needed to be. So I got the negative signal. I brought myself back into accordance with proper breath and proper rhythm. And all of a sudden, the body starts to respond. I start to gain a little bit of flow. I start to gain a little bit of momentum on the bike. And by the end of the effort, I'm kind of back around like the same speed that I was on my Monday effort, where I was just focusing on pedaling and getting 90 minutes on the bike. And I make it back home. And Saturday is like a stretching kind of a session in terms of using my mace, my 15-pound mace, as a way to, stretch out this back muscle, which I've tweaked a couple times and I kind of know how to take care of. And I go out on my Sunday long run for the trails and it feels okay. All to the point where I got on my bike yesterday. It was a shorter ride, but I spent the whole time just up in this upright position, interrogating this posture and the way it makes this muscle feel. So I turned the bad into the good by a proper understanding of breath and rhythm and the overall good intention of why I'm even doing the training in the first place. If my aim had been solely on numbers and using good numbers as an indication of goodness in the effort, oh, I would so be tilted towards bad, and I would so be bad. Everything would be bad. The body would still be bad. The mind would be bad. The spirit would be bad. I would just be lamenting the fact that I was hurt and I was injured and I wasn't getting mine. And like, oh my gosh, like triathlon training. Why am I even doing this? Why am I even trying to become a chase athlete? Why can't I just do the space? Why can't I just train in the way I've always trained? Like, you can see how this stuff negatively cascades on each other. And it's kind of funny how it all works full circle in terms of, episode 72 and episode 73 and episode 74 here. But they are all threaded here. They are all threaded because it's so easy for me to allow the bad of a moment to become the bad of the environment, to become the bad of the situation, to become the bad of the whole process. And then since I am the process, man, then I'm bad. So if I'm bad, why don't I just go do bad? And you think, well, it's not that simple, is it? But it really is because the line between good and evil goes right down the center of my being. So anytime I make the bad choice, no matter how small or big it is, I become more bad. And if I make the good choice, I become more good. So the good choice in the middle of a bike ride to check down and to interrogate a muscle pull reverberates the goodness that's inherent in my action, and that convinces me of the goodness of my life so that I go and I have a great weekend with my family, which is what I want my weekends to be anyways, like all family time. And I'm on my phone less and I'm doing more around the house and I'm giving more space to my wife so that she can have some time on the weekend, both with the kids, but by herself, and that we're doing the right things with the kids. And it's like it all flows together. Like the goodness of my life flows out of the goodness of how I act moment to moment in my life. And that can be patience with my kid when they're screaming, but it can also be recognizing the proper cadence of breath and rhythm in my physical activity to get the right result. So this was a little bit more story time actually than it was conceptual, but I think this is a good place to end. Number one, because I'm starting to feel my brain ooze out of my ears. I'm a little tired after full day of coaching calls where I'm giving my spirit and giving all my mind, all my mental energy to my people. But I just don't want this to be like this massive, long, off the dome, going all different directions all at once. So kind of happy that this ended up a little bit more into story time and how we actually embody this stuff, as opposed to like just a straight out conceptual goodness versus badness in terms of emotion, which I don't think would have been actually very, very productive given last episode was almost completely in the ether. It's almost in the netherworld of thought. This one's a little bit more grounded, and it gives me this good sense that the goodness and the badness of each moment, like in terms of my effort, can really be this outsized moment of challenge in my life where I can test myself morally, good versus bad, and the whole effort becomes this normative space, but only if I'm intentional. Only if I'm intentional and I have my attention put on this stuff. If I don't, none of it's ever coming to me. None of it's ever coming to me. So I have to be conscious. I have to be conscious about turning my physical efforts into a playground for good and evil to reign, and to see the whole exercise as a moral exercise. When I do that, that's when everything can open up in terms of these things relating me to the goodness and to the badness that is in my life. And importantly for me, how I can help other people recognize this about themselves and how to use the physical as this incredible cultivating space to know the good and bad of myself, to see the forces playing out in each of my actions, to locate that within the arena of the physical, whether that's the gym or the track or the competition or whatever. And then to understand that deeply, to move it beyond those lines, and then to take it into my day-to-day life, my relationships and my job and my conception of myself, not just in the physical. So it really does all work together in this incredible way. And you ask, like, well, how do you know? Why are you a believer in this stuff? And it's like, the amount of times that I'm just talking about training with one of my clients, and then all of a sudden the moral edifice has built itself in the wake of the training, and it was exactly the moral thing that that person needed to take on the gigantic challenge in their life that had nothing to do with training. How many times? If I got a dozen clients and it happens 11 out of 12 times, and that happens 11 times a year for 4 years. And so, yeah, not going to happen for everybody, but come on, not everybody puts their full heart into this stuff. You might hire a coach, you might pay them all the money, but you're not doing all the work. Okay. And I've done this. Like, I paid the money and I haven't done all the work and I didn't get any of the results. Okay. And what do I do? Do I blame the coach? No, I shouldn't. I should blame myself for not doing the work. Okay. So for everybody who I've seen do the work with their full heart, this has happened. They always seem to gain the exact amount of moral courage that they need for something that is totally unrelated to their physical training, but has been expressly cultivated and understood in the context of the physical training, in this context of good versus bad or good versus evil inside of yourself. Oh my gosh. Like, it's crazy how it works, guys, but I promise you, it does. And I gave you the example right there of myself, and I've seen that play out a million times in my own life, and now I'm seeing it playing out and reverberating hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times in the lives of everybody that I coach. And it's like this incredible juice that I just want to, like, sprinkle and share with everybody because I find it incredible. And sometimes I badly explain it, like I probably just did in this whole podcast. But actually, I don't think it was that badly explained. Okay. And again, if you are listening to this and you are thinking, oh my gosh, I need to get this type of handle on my own life, my own physical efforts, I need the consistency in the gym, I need better health, but I don't just want it for the metrics. I want it to deeply extend into everything that I'm doing in my life so that I recognize how I can act more righteously, more for righteously, and bring more good into my life, into the lives of those around me. This is how the coaching works. This is legitimately how the coaching works. Go all the way back to 72, listen to 72, 73, and 74, and all together from the conceptual down to like the absolute, like one step in front of the other of having to bike, oops, in pain, up to the top of the hill, and then boom, figuring out what to do on the other side of the hill. This is how the magic works. And it's like it's all in between. So again, I'm going to finish this off today by just extending the invitation, extending the open invite for anybody who's interested in exploring what this style of fitness can do for your life. Like, you got to take the step. You got to reach out. You got to make it real in your life. You got to be intentional. You got to put the attention onto it. And I would love to just show you how. There's no strings attached. There's no, oh, you send a message and that means like the full sales pitch is on. It's just, I want to share. I want to share this process. I want to share this magic. I want to share this philosophy, this embodied philosophy of moral action with as many people as I can, because I've seen it work miracles in people's lives, and I'd love for the miracles to be shared in your life too. So all those contact details, find them in the show notes. If you stuck it out on the Substack live stream, peace and love. I appreciate you guys. Um, Hook me up with a message. We'll go from there. Otherwise, we're just going to wrap this up. 74. I didn't promise a conclusion. I didn't promise a synthesis. I don't think I delivered on either of those. Hey, not so bad. We're going to take a break from this addendum series. I got an amazing guest coming on next week. We're going to see if we might be able to actually do the live stream with the guest here on Substack. That would be very cool, but I'm not going to give you too many hints as to who's coming on, but it is a heavy hitter in the world of fitness, health, psychology. He's a guy who I've had many conversations with privately, but it would be the first time we're talking publicly. And I'm just honored to be able to bring him on. Surprise guest for episode 75. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Uh, if you like what you heard, 5-star review, send me some love, all that good jazz. I appreciate it, each and every one of you. One open heart to another. Peace and love. See you in the next one.